Welcome back. In today's tutorial, we are going to learn how to reharmonize a simple major key chord progression and give it a bluesy, kind of grounded and subtly adventurous sound using something called the Mixolydian mode. As always, it's fun, it's flexible, and it's probably way easier than you realize. So first, we are going to break down what makes the Mixolydian mode unique before we'll learn how to reharmonize a basic major key chord progression using Mixolydian techniques. And then finally, I'll show you a brand new strategy for writing chord progressions strictly within the Mixolydian mode, or honestly any other mode for that matter. So let's get into it. So this time around, we are going to start with a good old-fashioned C major scale. The Mixolydian mode is a major mode, which means, among other things, that it shares most of its notes with the major scale, but with one important twist. To create the Mixolydian mode, you just need to find the 7th scale degree of any major scale and lower it by half a step. So in the key of C major, our 7th note is B natural. If we lower that a half step, we get B flat, which in Cubase is written out as an A sharp. This lowered 7th scale degree is your characteristic note. It's the one note that is responsible for that slightly bluesy, relaxed, and open sound that the Mixolydian is known for. Since both C major and C Mixolydian start with the same note, a C natural, we can call them parallel scales. And this relationship is what allows us to apply reharmonization techniques directly to any major key progression. We just need to make sure that we're swapping out chords from the parallel mode. Now, to build the chords in any mode, we use something called the add-skip rule. You're going to start with a note, skip the next note in the scale, and add the 3rd note. We'll skip the 4th note and we'll add the 5th. This is why each of the notes in the chords have their names, the 1st, 3rd, and 5th. If we repeat this pattern, we start with the next note, D. We skip the 2nd note right after it, and we add the 3rd note after it. We skip the 4th, add the 5th. Apply this process to every note in your scale, and you find the naturally occurring or diatonic chords of the Mixolydian scale. And here you'll see that I have highlighted each of the chords that contain our characteristic note. These chords are called our characteristic chords, and they're packed with the personality of the mode, especially when you pair with them with the tonic chord, or the 1st chord of the scale. For example, if we go from C major to G minor, we get this beautifully Mixolydian sound. And each of these characteristic chords are going to be at the very center of our strategies we'll be discussing today. All right, so right here we have a very simple major key chord progression written in the key of C major. It goes C major, G major, A minor, F major, C major, D minor, B diminished, and then C major again. It's effective, a little boring though, so let's see if we can create something more interesting using 3 different reharmonization techniques. Strategy number 1 is to end with a modal cadence. A modal cadence is anytime you take a characteristic chord and immediately follow it up with the tonic chord, or the very 1st chord of your scale. So if we look at the end here, right now we have a diminished chord into our 1 chord. If we take this B diminished and we replace it with a characteristic chord by very simply lowering that B natural to a B flat, we get a softer, more colorful cadence that instantly helps shift the tonal flavor of our sound. Strategy number 2 is to insert a modal cadence somewhere in the middle of the chord progression. In this case, look for anywhere in the middle of the chord progression where you use your tonic chord. And here we have an example here in bar 5 where I have a C major chord. So the natural step is to identify the chord right in front of it. Here we have an F major. And we are going to replace this chord with one of our characteristic chords. It can be any of them. However, we will always get the smoothest transition when we replace this chord with a characteristic chord that has at least one note in common. Of the options in C Mixolydian, we have an E diminished, a G minor, and a B flat major. The only option of those three that has a note in common with F major is the B flat major. So we will take this A, raise it into a B flat, take this C, move it to a D, update the bass line to reflect the new chord, and now we have a nice modal cadence in the middle of our progression. And strategy number 3 is, of course, the simplest. Just look for opportunities to throw in a quick characteristic note. Here in bar 2, we have a G major. We can take this B, replace it with a B flat, and just like that, we have transformed our major key chord progression into a Mixolydian chord progression. Let's listen to the two different versions back to back. As we listen to the chord progressions, I'll make sure to highlight the chords that were changed so you can follow along visually with the reharmonizations that we made. Now, it's important to note that anytime you use these reharmonization strategies, you should feel no pressure at all to change every chord in the progression. You are more than welcome to use chords from both the parallel major and Mixolydian scale, however you'd like. Remember that the only rule in music theory is that sound is king. If you like the way your music sounds, then go for it, all right? But with that being said, sometimes you don't want to just reharmonize a chord progression. Sometimes you want to write a modal chord progression right from the start. Now, in the other modal videos I've made, which I'll have linked in the description, I've recommended structures called period structure and sentence structure when it comes to creating modal chord progressions. In this video, though, I want to try sharing a different strategy, something called an absolute progression. Now, the term absolute progression comes from a branch of music theory known as Neo-Riemannian theory. And it basically describes a chord progression that consists of just two chords repeated over and over and over again. This strategy works really, really well for modal harmony, where you pick just two of your favorite chords from the mode and you repeat them one after the other. But here's the trick. You can use different inversions each time to keep things interesting. For example, let's say that my favorite chords from Mixolydian are the combination of the 1 chord and the 5 chord. So I will take this chord combination, I will copy and paste it 2 times so that it repeats a total of 3 times. Not 4, I'll explain why in a little bit, although you can if you'd like. And then I'm going to just very simply explore different inversions to see what kind of sound they create. As you do this, feel free to ignore typical voice leading conventions. Again, the only rule here is, do you like how it sounds? And you could repeat this pattern as long as you'd like for as many measures as you'd like. But when you're ready to end, it can be very helpful to use a different combination of chords to create a modal cadence that brings it all to an end. In this case, I will go with the B flat major into the C major, so that the full chord progression sounds like this. Really cool, right? And that wraps up another tutorial. I hope this inspires you to start bringing more chromatic colors into your major key progressions. If you'd like to keep going deeper into storytelling with harmony, check out my textbook, The Musical Storyteller. Over 400 pages guiding composers to working with ensembles, DAWs, sound libraries, and more. Digital copies are on my website. Physical copies are available on Amazon, and links to both are in the description. A huge thank you goes out to my patrons and channel members. Your support makes this possible. So until next time, my friends, keep studying, keep working hard, and keep writing new music. I will see you in the next video.